I parked in the service lane behind Eastern State Penitentiary around 8:30 on a Tuesday morning in March. Cold enough that I could see my breath, but not cold enough for ice. The lane wasn't on any visitor map, just cracked asphalt between a chain-link fence and the back of the old cell blocks. The kind of access road maintenance crews use when they don't want anyone watching. The gate was already unlocked. I slipped through. This was supposed to be just a drainage review. That's what the contract said. Someone at the prison, Donna Dunn, project manager, had called my office 2 weeks back and asked if I could assess subsurface water issues in the East Wing. Standard stuff. I do a lot of historical building work. Foundations, runoff patterns, fixing what 19th century contractors got wrong. I told myself that's all this was. But the second I stepped past that gate and saw the staff row houses lined up along the interior fence, I felt it. That old pull. The same one I'd been trying to ignore since Donna first said the prison's name on the phone. The row houses looked exactly the same. Narrow 2-story brick things with concrete stoops and small windows. They used to house guards and maintenance staff back when the prison was active. Now most of them were just storage or offices, I figured. But I knew those buildings. Knew the way the doors sat a little crooked in their frames. Knew the basement hatches around back. I walked past them toward the main service entrance, boots loud on the asphalt, and my brain kept pulling up images I didn't want. Damp steps, blank walls, that feeling of something waiting below. I tried to focus on the job, drainage review, subsurface water. I had my site inspection folder in one hand and a mag light in my jacket pocket, professional stuff. This wasn't personal, except it was. It always was here. I grew up in one of those row houses. Number 6, the one with the green door that never latched right. My father, Tony, worked maintenance for the prison for 23 years. He had a key ring the size of my fist, maybe 30 keys on it, all labeled with tape and marker in his tight handwriting. He wore Carhartt jackets and steel-toed Red Wings and treated locked hatches and service corridors like they were normal. Just part of the landscape. When you're a kid, you don't question that stuff. You don't think it's weird that your dad disappears into sub-basements for hours or comes home smelling like rust and old water. You don't think it's strange that there are places he won't talk about, doors he won't open when you're with him. But there was one place Tony always warned me away from. The service basement under Cellblock 7. He never called it dangerous, never said it was full of asbestos or bad wiring, which would have made sense. He just said it was unsafe. That was the word he used. Unsafe, and the way he said it didn't sound like a structural problem. It sounded like something else. I was maybe 12 when I asked him what was down there. We were sitting in the kitchen of the row house and he was cleaning his tools at the table. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Nothing you need to see." That was it. Didn't explain, didn't elaborate. Just went back to wiping down a pipe wrench. I remember that bugged me. Not in a big dramatic way, just enough that I kept thinking about it. I tried to follow him once. I was 14. It was summer and I was bored, and Tony had gone out to handle something in the East Wing. I waited a few minutes, then slipped out of the row house and tracked him through the maintenance corridors. I knew the layout pretty well by then, knew which doors led where, which hallways connected. I found the stairwell he'd gone down. It was in the back corner of Cell Block 7, behind a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The door was propped open with a wooden wedge, which meant Tony was still down there. I stood at the top of the stairs and looked down. The smell hit me first. Metal and rainwater. Not quite rust, not quite mold. Something in between. The kind of smell that makes you think of things left underground too long. The stairs went down in a tight spiral. Old concrete, worn smooth in the centers of the steps. There was a light at the bottom, maybe 40 feet down, but it was dim, yellowish, flickering a little. I didn't go down. I wanted to. Part of me was curious, the way kids are. But another part of me, the part that listened when my gut said stop, kept my feet at the top of those stairs. I stood there for maybe 2 minutes, just listening. I didn't hear Tony moving around, didn't hear tools or footsteps or anything that sounded like maintenance work, just a faint dripping sound, slow and steady. Then I heard the door scrape behind me and I turned, and Tony was there, not downstairs, behind me. He'd come up a different way. He looked at me, didn't yell, didn't grab my arm or anything, just looked. "Go home," he said. I went. We never talked about it. I left for Temple when I was 18, got a degree in civil engineering with a focus on water management and drainage systems. It made sense. I'd grown up around old infrastructure, around buildings that leaked and flooded and needed constant attention. I understood how water moved through soil and stone, how it found the cracks and worn down places. I started my own contracting business when I was 26. Small jobs at first, residential stuff, crawl space repairs, sump pump installations. Then I got into historical preservation work, older buildings, complicated drainage problems, clients who cared about doing it right. I was good at it. People said so. I didn't miss much. But the dreams stayed, not every night, just often enough that I couldn't ignore them. Spiral steps going down, doors that weren't on any plan I'd ever seen, water rising from beneath concrete, slow and dark and cold. I never told anyone about them. What would I say? That I dreamed about my dad's old workplace? That I couldn't shake the memory of a basement I never actually entered? It sounded stupid even in my own head. Tony died last November. Heart attack. He was 61. I drove back for the funeral. Saw people I hadn't thought about in years. A couple of his old co-workers from the prison showed up. They shook my hand and said he was a good guy, dependable, knew the facility better than anyone. One of them, an older man named Carl, pulled me aside after the service. He asked if I was still doing contracting work. I said yeah. He nodded and said the prison might be calling. "They're doing some restoration," Carl said. "Historical preservation grant or something. Tony used to handle a lot of the subsurface issues. They're gonna need someone who knows what they're doing." I didn't say anything, just nodded. Carl looked at me for a second. Then he said, "Your dad was careful, real careful about what he opened up down there." I asked what he meant. He shrugged. "Just saying, be careful too." Then he walked away. Donna Dunn called my office in January. She was polite, professional, said they'd gotten my name from a former staff member, that they needed someone to assess drainage problems in the East Wing. Old building, tricky infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. She asked if I was available. I should have said no. Should have referred her to someone else. There are plenty of contractors who do this kind of work, but I didn't. I said yes. I told myself it was just a job, good money, interesting project, the kind of historical work I actually enjoyed. Nothing more than that. But standing there in the service lane, walking past those row houses with my site folder and my mag light, I knew that wasn't true. I'd come back because I needed to know. Needed to see what was under Cellblock 7. Needed to understand what Tony had been so careful about. Needed to figure out if those dreams meant something or if I was just dragging around old childhood garbage that didn't matter anymore. Probably stupid. Probably nothing. But I was here anyway. That was it. The prison had called me back, and I'd said yes. And now I was walking through the same maintenance corridors my father had walked for 23 years, heading toward the same basements he'd disappeared into. I reached the main service entrance and pulled the door open. The facilities office was on the second floor of the admin building, past a guard station that had been converted to a sign-in desk. Nobody sat there. I walked past and followed the arrows taped to the wall. Somebody'd printed them on regular copy paper and stuck them up with masking tape that was starting to peel. The door had a laminated sign that said Project Management in Arial font. I knocked once and pushed it open. Donna Dunn was sitting at a folding table with 3 laptops open and a stack of binders tall enough to block half the window behind her. She looked up, nodded once, and stood. "Dylan Burgess? That's me." She shook my hand. Her grip was firm and quick. "Donna Dunn, thanks for coming out on short notice." "No problem." She gestured to a metal chair across from her. "Let's get the paperwork out of the way first. Shouldn't take more than 15 minutes if everything's in order." I sat. The chair was the kind they use in school cafeterias. Cold metal back, no padding. Donna pulled a manila folder from the top of one stack and opened it flat on the table. Inside were maybe 8 or 9 forms clipped together. She turned the packet toward me and clicked a pen. "Standard contractor access agreement," she said. "You've probably seen these before. Liability waiver, clearance acknowledgement, site safety protocol, sign at the bottom of each page, initial where it's highlighted." I pulled the packet closer and started reading. Most of it was boilerplate. I wasn't allowed to bring weapons, recording devices, or alcohol onto the premises. I had to wear high-vis gear in active work zones. I couldn't access secure areas without an escort. Standard stuff. Donna was already looking at her laptop again, typing something with her thumb on the trackpad. She wasn't watching me. She probably did this 5 times a week. I signed the first 3 pages and flipped to the 4th. This one had a paragraph about historical preservation requirements and a line about adhering to state and federal guidelines for buildings on the historic register. I initialed it. "Your dad worked here a long time," Donna said. She didn't look up from the screen. 23 years. That's what I heard. She clicked something and closed the laptop halfway. "Carl mentioned you when I asked around for someone who knew the subsurface layout. Said you'd done drainage work on older buildings before. Mostly foundations, some tunnel systems. Good. That's what we need." She pulled a second folder from the stack and set it aside, still closed. "The grant funding's contingent on us keeping the original infrastructure intact where possible. That means we can't just rip out the old drainage and start over. We need someone who can assess what's there and tell us what we can salvage." I finished the last 2 forms and pushed the packet back across the table. "That's the plan." She took it without checking my signatures and clipped it back together. Then she stood and walked to a dented filing cabinet in the corner. She pulled the second drawer open and reached into the back. When she turned around, she was holding a padded envelope. It was the kind with bubble wrap inside, maybe 6 inches by 9 inches. Someone had written D. Burgess on the front in blue ballpoint pen. She set it on the table in front of me. "This was in your father's locker," she said. "Maintenance cleared it out last month. Your name was on it, so I held on to it until you came in." I looked at the envelope. The handwriting was Tony's. All capitals, neat block letters. The same way he labeled his keys. "Thanks," I said. Donna sat back down and opened her laptop all the way. "Take your time. I've got a few emails to handle." I picked up the envelope. It wasn't sealed, just folded shut with the metal clasp. I bent the tabs up and reached inside. There were 2 things. The first was a piece of graph paper folded into quarters. I opened it flat on the table. It was a sketch, pencil on grid paper, the kind you'd buy at an office supply store. The lines were straight and deliberate. I recognized the layout immediately. Cellblock 7, drawn from above. Tony'd marked the main corridor, the cell rows on either side, and the back corner where the maintenance stairwell was. He'd drawn an arrow pointing down from that corner and written "Basement, Main Access" next to it. Below that, he'd sketched the basement level. It was rougher, less to scale. A large rectangular room with support columns marked as small circles. On the west side of the room, near the far wall, he'd drawn a small square and colored it in with red ink. Next to it, he'd written "Hatch." The second thing in the envelope was a note card, plain white, the kind that comes with greeting cards. Tony's handwriting again, this time in black pen. It said, Dylan, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. Don't open the red hatch, especially not alone, especially not after midnight. I know how this sounds. I'm sorry, just trust me. Dad, I read it twice. Then I set it down next to the sketch and stared at both of them. Donna was still typing. She wasn't paying attention. I folded the note card and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Then I folded the sketch and put that in too. My hands felt cold. Tony wasn't the kind of person who wrote things down unless he had to. He didn't leave notes, he didn't do sentimental gestures, and he definitely didn't warn people about things unless he had a concrete reason. But this sounded like ghost story stuff. Don't go in the basement after midnight. Don't open the hatch alone. It sounded like the kind of thing you'd tell a kid to keep them out of somewhere dangerous. Except Tony'd kept this in his work locker. He'd written my name on it and left it in prison custody, where someone would find it and pass it along. That wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. That was deliberate. I sat back in the chair and looked at the window behind Donna. The glass was old and warped, and through it I could see part of the east wing. Cellblock 7 was in there somewhere. I tried to refocus. I had site drawings to review, access schedules to confirm, and a full day of inspections ahead. The sketch was probably just Tony being cautious. He'd spent 2 decades managing maintenance in a building that was over 100 years old. Of course, he'd mapped out the basements. Of course, he'd flagged structural hazards. The hatch was probably a sump access or a crawl space cover. Something that led to a space with bad air or unstable footing. Don't open it alone, because you'd need a second person to pull you out if something went wrong. Don't open it after midnight, because that's when you're tired and more likely to make a mistake. That made sense. That was practical. But he'd used red ink, and he'd apologized in the note, and he'd told me to trust him, which he never did, because Tony didn't ask for trust. He just expected you to follow instructions. I pulled the sketch back out of my pocket and looked at it again. The hatch was small on the page, just a square. But Tony'd drawn it carefully, centered it in the room, labeled it clearly. I figured I'd take a look when I got down there, see what it actually was. Probably nothing. Probably just... Donna's radio crackled. She grabbed it off the table and thumbed the button. Done here. A man's voice came through, rough and loud. Donna, it's Patrick. We've got a situation in Cellblock 7 basement. Need you down here. Donna frowned. What kind of situation? Crew found something during demo. I'm not moving forward until we get an engineer to sign off. Inspectors are scheduled for Thursday and we can't afford a delay. Donna glanced at me, then back at the radio. I've got the contractor here now. We'll head down. Copy. We're at the main access. She clipped the radio to her belt and stood. Looks like you're starting sooner than planned. I folded the sketch again and put it back in my pocket. What did they find? Don't know yet. Patrick doesn't spook easy, so if he's calling for sign-off, it's probably structural. She grabbed a hard hat from the filing cabinet and tossed me a second one from a cardboard box near the door. Let's go take a look. I caught the hat and stood. My chest felt tight. Cellblock 7. The basement. The place Tony'd spent 23 years keeping me away from. Donna was already halfway out the door. I followed her into the hallway, past the empty guard station and down the stairs toward the east wing, the sketch pressed against my ribs through my jacket. Tony's note was right next to it. Don't open the red hatch, especially not alone. I kept walking. The basement under Cellblock 7 looked exactly how I remembered it from the sketch. Big rectangular room, low ceiling with exposed pipes running parallel to the walls, concrete support columns every 12 feet or so, work lights on stands in 3 corners, extension cords taped down across the floor. The air smelled like damp concrete and that specific kind of dust you get when you drill into old mortar. Patrick was standing near the far wall with two other guys from his crew. All three of them had their arms crossed. Nobody was working. Donna walked straight over. I followed a few steps behind, scanning the room as I went. The sketch Tony drew matched perfectly. Same layout, same column placement, same back corner where the maintenance corridor should connect. And there, on the west side near the far wall, exactly where the red square had been marked on the paper, was a hatch set into the floor. It was painted red, bright red, the kind of industrial warning color you use for high-voltage panels or confined space access. The hatch itself was maybe 3 feet square, heavy steel with a recessed handle. Around the edges I could see where bolts should have been, 8 of them, evenly spaced, with holes drilled through the frame. The bolts were gone. And leading away from the hatch, crossing about 6 feet of dusty concrete before they faded out, were wet footprints. I stopped walking. Donna kept going, pulling her radio off her belt as she reached Patrick. "Show me," she said. Patrick pointed at the hatch. He didn't step any closer to it. We were pulling conduit off the east wall. Jen heard something and thought maybe we'd cracked a water line, so I came over to check. Found this. "The footprints," Donna said. "Yeah." Patrick's voice was flat. "Those weren't here yesterday. We checked this whole floor before we started demo. Standard safety sweep. That hatch was bolted shut. 8 carriage bolts, each one maybe half an inch thick." Donna crouched next to the hatch looking at the bolt holes. I stayed where I was, about 10 feet back, and made myself breathe slowly. The footprints were bare. No tread pattern, no shoe sole, just the outline of feet. They were small, maybe a size 7, maybe smaller, and they were still wet. I could see the moisture beading on the concrete, little drops catching the work light. "Where do the prints go?" Donna asked. Patrick gestured vaguely toward the northwest corner. "They fade out after a few feet. We didn't follow them. Figured that was above our pay grade." One of the other crew guys, younger with a neck tattoo, spoke up. "We're not going down there, just so that's clear." Donna stood. She looked at me for the first time since we'd entered the basement. "Dylan, you're the subsurface specialist. What do you think?" I walked over, keeping my face neutral. The sketch was still in my jacket pocket. Tony's note was right next to it. "Don't open the red hatch, especially not alone. Especially not after midnight." It was 10:40 in the morning and the hatch was already open. I crouched where Donna had been and looked at the bolt holes. They were clean. No stripped threads, no corrosion, no sign the bolts had been cut or forced. Someone had just unscrewed them, recently probably. The metal edges were still shiny. "Looks like routine access," I said. My voice came out steady. That surprised me a little. "Probably maintenance staff checking a sump line or valve assembly. The footprints are concerning, though. If someone went down barefoot, that suggests either a medical issue or they didn't plan to go far." Patrick made a noise that might have been a laugh. "You want to explain why they didn't come back up?" "We don't know that they didn't," I said. I stood and brushed dust off my knee. "The prints could be from yesterday. Moisture in a subsurface access like this tends to linger. Condensation, humidity differential, poor ventilation. It's possible someone went down, came back up wearing boots or shoes, and we're just seeing the residual from the initial entry." It sounded reasonable. I was pretty sure I didn't believe a word of it. Donna was nodding, though. "We need to clear it anyway. Can't have an open access point in an active work zone. OSHA would have a field day." She looked at Patrick. "You're right to call it in. Good judgment." Patrick didn't look reassured. "So what's the plan?" Donna turned to me. "You're going to need to go down and assess. Make sure there's no structural issue, no water main compromise, nothing that'll impact the renovation timeline. Standard subsurface inspection." I nodded. My chest felt tight again. "I'll need a flashlight and a spare radio if you have one. I'll get you both." Donna pulled her radio back up. "And you'll need an escort. Union rules. Nobody goes into a confined space alone. She pressed the talk button. Don, you copy? Static, then a voice. Yeah, I'm here. Where's here? Second floor, running cable to the new panel. I need you in Cellblock 7 basement, now. Copy. Donna clipped the radio back to her belt and looked at Patrick. Get him a mag light and one of the backup handhelds, fresh batteries. Patrick nodded and walked toward a gray toolbox near the east wall. The younger guy with the neck tattoo was still staring at the hatch. The third crew member had moved closer to the stairs. I pulled the folded drawing set from my jacket, the one Donna had given me upstairs, not Tony's sketch, and flipped through until I found the basement level. The plan showed this room, the support columns, the main access stairs. In the corner where the red hatch sat, the drawing showed a small notation. Subsurface utility access. See detail sheet M12. I flipped to M12. It showed a standard maintenance crawl space, maybe 4 feet high, running under the cell block with valve access points every 30 feet. Total length maybe 200 feet, terminating at an exterior drainage junction on the north side of the building. That's what should be down there. A low concrete tunnel with water shutoffs and maybe some old electrical conduit. Patrick came back with a yellow mag light and a black Motorola handheld. He handed both to me without making eye contact. Thanks, I said. He just nodded. The door at the top of the basement stairs opened and someone came down. I turned and saw a guy about my age, maybe a little older, with short black hair and an electrician's tool belt. He was wearing a Union jacket with a logo I didn't recognize. Donna waved him over. Don, this is Dylan Burgess. He's the contractor handling subsurface assessment. Dylan, Don Singh. He's been with us since the project started. Worked under Tony back in the day, actually. Don's expression shifted when he heard Tony's name. Something I couldn't quite read. He stuck out his hand and I shook it. Your dad was good people, Don said. Real solid. I was sorry to hear he passed. Thanks. Donna gestured toward the hatch. We've got an open access point that needs clearing. You're going down with Dylan to document and assist. Standard confined space protocol. Should be quick. Just a visual sweep and assessment. Don looked at the hatch, then at the footprints, then back at Donna. Sure, he said. No problem. His voice was light, casual, but I saw his jaw tighten. Donna was already walking back toward the stairs. Radio if you find anything structural. Otherwise, just confirm it's clear and we'll get it rebolted. Patrick, your crew can break for lunch. Resume demo at 1300 if we're done by then. Patrick nodded. He and his guys were already moving toward the stairs before Donna finished talking. Then it was just me and Don standing next to the red hatch. Don pulled a smaller flashlight from his belt and clicked it on, testing the beam. So, routine access problem, huh? That's what the plans say. Right. He crouched and looked at the footprints. You see a lot of maintenance guys who work barefoot? Not many. Yeah, me neither. He stood back up and forced a grin. Probably just rats. Big ones, walking on their hind legs. Probably. He laughed, but it came out too sharp. Then he turned and scanned the ceiling, his eyes moving from pipe to pipe, checking the corners where the walls met the support columns. His hand drifted to his tool belt, fingers brushing the handle of a utility knife. You worked with my dad, I said. Yeah, for about 6 years before he retired. Good boss. Didn't micromanage, didn't panic, real steady. Don paused. He ever mentioned this hatch to you? Not directly. Don nodded slowly. He was still scanning the room, head turning in small increments, like he was tracking something he couldn't see. He told you not to come down here, Don said. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer right away. I pulled the mag light from my pocket and clicked it on. The beam was strong, bright white LED. He mentioned it was unsafe. Yeah, he would have. Don finally stopped scanning and looked at me directly. Look, I don't know what Tony told you or what he left you, but he had his reasons for keeping this locked down. We both did. He made me promise not to say anything to management, to Donna, to anyone on the project team. Said it was handled, said it was under control, said as long as nobody opened it, we'd be fine. Don's voice dropped. That was the deal. Keep it bolted, keep it quiet, and nothing comes up. Nothing. That's what he said. I looked at the wet footprints again. They were starting to fade at the edges, the moisture evaporating slowly in the dry basement air. But the ones closest to the hatch were still clearly visible, still wet. Someone opened it, I said. Yeah, I noticed that too. Don clipped his flashlight back to his belt and pulled work gloves from his back pocket. He tugged them on, flexing his fingers. So we go down, we take a look. We radio up that everything's fine, and we get this thing bolted shut again. Triple the bolts if we have to. That sound like a plan? Works for me. Don stepped up to the hatch and gripped the recessed handle with both hands. He pulled. The hatch lifted smoothly on heavy hinges, swinging up and back until it locked vertical with a metallic click. The opening gaped black and square in the floor. Cold air rolled out. Not just cool, cold, like someone had left a freezer open. It smelled like metal, like pennies. And underneath that, rain. Old rain. The smell of wet pavement after a storm that ended hours ago. I pointed the mag light down into the opening. Concrete steps, spiral, descending. The walls were poured concrete, smooth and gray, curving down and to the left. The stairs were wet, not damp, wet, with visible moisture coating each step, beading on the edges, collecting in the seams. That's not on the drawings, I said quietly. Don leaned over and looked down. No, it's not. The drawing set showed a crawl space, 4 feet high, horizontal access, 200 feet long. This was a stairwell, a deep one. I swept the mag light beam down as far as it would reach. The spiral continued past the light, disappearing into darkness below. I counted steps as they curved out of sight. 15, 20, still going. We should radio Donna, Don said. And tell her what? He didn't answer. I clipped the spare radio to my belt next to my own and checked that both were set to the same channel. Then I put one foot on the first step. The concrete was slick under my boot, moisture slippery and cold. Don made a small noise behind me. You're actually going down. That's the job. Your dad wouldn't want you to. I looked back at him. You said you worked with him for 6 years. You think he would have sent someone else down if he thought there was a real problem? Don's face shifted. He looked away. No, he would have gone himself. Right. Damn it. Don stepped onto the first step behind me. Stay close, and if I say we're leaving, we're leaving. No arguments. Deal. I started down. The maglite beam swept ahead of me, showing 3 or 4 steps at a time before the curve of the spiral cut off the view. My left hand found the handrail, cold metal, slick with the same moisture coating the steps. I could feel it through my glove, slippery and wrong. Behind me, Don's boots scraped on concrete. His breathing was audible in the enclosed space. The stairwell smelled stronger as we descended. Pennies and rain, and now something else underneath. Something organic and faint, like old leaves rotting in a gutter. I counted steps, 10, 15, 20. The walls stayed smooth concrete, unbroken by doors or vents or access panels. Just spiral stairs going down. At 30 steps, I stopped and checked my radio. The channel indicator glowed green. I pressed the talk button. Donna, this is Dylan. Radio check. Static. Then her voice, faint but clear. Copy, Dylan. You're readable. What's your status? Descending the access stairs. It's deeper than the drawings indicated. We're continuing down. Copy. Keep me updated. I released the button and kept going. 40 steps. 50. The temperature dropped another few degrees. I could see my breath now, faint white fog in the maglite beam. Don spoke from behind me. This goes under the whole cell block, maybe farther. Yeah, that's not code. You can't just dig a hole this deep under a building without permits, without engineering reports, without... I know. 60 steps. 70. The walls changed. I stopped. Don nearly walked into my back. What? He said. I pointed the maglite at the wall to my left. The concrete had ended. Now the walls were brick, old brick, dark red and uneven, with thick mortar joints that looked hand-troweled. The bricks were wet too, glistening in the flashlight beam. When was this prison built? I asked. Main construction was 1890-something. This cell block is newer, though. 1920, I think. I touched the brick. It was cold. The mortar crumbled slightly under my glove. This is older than that. How old? I don't know, but it's old. I kept descending. The brick walls continued, curving with the spiral. 80 steps, 90. Then I saw something that made me stop again. Numbers painted on the wall in white stencil about chest height. I swept the light up and read them. 7. 3 steps lower, another number. 6. 3 more steps. 5. It's counting down, Don said. Yeah. 4, 3, 2, 1. The stairs ended. I stepped off onto a flat brick floor and swept the maglite around. We were in a corridor. Brick walls on both sides, brick ceiling arched overhead, maybe 7 feet high at the peak. The floor was wet, covered in a thin film of water that reflected the flashlight beam. The corridor stretched ahead into darkness. I couldn't see the end. Behind me, Don pulled out his own flashlight and clicked it on. 2 beams now, crossing and separating as we moved. This is the utility access, I said. It has to be. This isn't a utility access. Don's voice was tight. Utilities don't have brick arches. They don't have numbered stairwells. I pulled the radio from my belt and pressed talk. Donna, we've reached the bottom of the access stairs. We're in a subsurface corridor. Brick construction, older than the cell block. Proceeding with visual inspection. Static. I waited. More static. Then a break, a squelch like someone trying to transmit, but no voice came through. Donna, do you copy? Pure static. Don pulled his radio and tried. Same result. White noise, no signal. We're too deep, he said. Maybe. I looked at the corridor again. The walls were solid. No doors, no side passages, just a straight brick tunnel disappearing into darkness. And along the wall, at regular intervals, I could see more numbers painted in white. They were running backward. The first one I could make out clearly was 83. Then, farther down, 82. 81. Those aren't distance markers, I said. Then what are they? I didn't answer. I was thinking about the stairwell numbers. 7, 6, 5, all the way down to 1. And now the corridor numbers, starting high and counting down as we moved forward. Like we were descending into something, or toward something. The radio on my belt dissolved into pure static, a harsh crackling that made me flinch. I turned the volume down, but the static continued, rhythmic now, pulsing in waves. Don's radio did the same thing. He yanked it off his belt and stared at it. What the hell? The static cut off. Both radios went completely silent. No hiss, no squelch, nothing. I pressed the talk button on mine. Dead. The channel indicator was still glowing green, but no sound came from the speaker. We should go back, Don said. I looked at the corridor stretching ahead, at the numbers counting down on the walls, at the thin film of water covering the floor, still and dark and reflecting nothing. Then I looked at the wet footprints. They were there, faint but visible, small bare feet, walking away from the stairs and into the corridor, going deeper. The corridor ran straight for maybe 30 feet before it hit a landing. I could see it in the maglite beam, flat concrete platform, different from the brick floor we'd been walking on. The water was thinner there, almost dry. I reached it first. Don was a few steps behind, sweeping his light across the walls and sealing every couple seconds. Still checking, still looking for something. The landing was maybe 6 feet square, clean concrete, newer than the bricks. Poured sometime in the last 20 or 30 years, I figured, based on the finish and the lack of major cracking. There was a metal door set into the wall on the right side. Gray paint, institutional. The kind of door you'd see in any municipal building. It had a sticker on it, upper left corner, about eye level. SEPTA logo, the Transit Authority, blue and white, a little faded but still readable. I stopped. "What?" Don said behind me. "That's a subway sticker." "Yeah?" "We're not near any subway line." I kept the light on it. "The nearest station is Fairmount. That's over a mile west." Don moved up beside me. Maybe someone just stuck it there. "Why?" He didn't answer. I tried the handle. It turned smooth, no resistance. The door swung inward on quiet hinges. Too quiet. Too easy. Like someone had oiled them recently. The space beyond was a corridor. Long. Straight. Lit by overhead fluorescents that hummed in that flat, constant buzz you get in office buildings or basement storage areas. The lights were on. All of them. Running down the length of the hall as far as I could see. The walls were tiled. White ceramic tiles, maybe 6 inches square, with dark grout lines. Standard commercial stuff. The floor was concrete with a slight camber for drainage, and there were metal grates set into it every 20 feet or so. It looked exactly like a subway service hall. The kind of access corridor that runs parallel to the tracks for maintenance crews. Except we were under a prison. Under the old Cellblock. Under 70-some steps of spiral staircase and a brick tunnel that didn't match any drawings. I stepped through. Don followed and let the door swing shut behind us. It closed with a soft click. The air was warmer here. Not warm, but not freezing. Maybe 55, 60 degrees. The smell was different too. Less metal, less rain. More like concrete dust and old electrical insulation. I felt relieved, just for a second. Then my light caught the walls. The tiles were covered in scratches. Thin lines carved into the glaze. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Tally marks. Clusters of 4 vertical lines with a diagonal slash through each set. They ran along both walls at about chest height, layered over each other in some places, spreading out in others. Someone had been counting. For years, probably. The deeper scratches were darker, stained with grime. The lighter ones looked newer, cleaner. I moved closer, ran my glove over a section. The marks went on for 10 feet, 15, then stopped, started again farther down. Dylan. I looked back. Don was standing in the middle of the corridor, light aimed at the ceiling. "What? How long you think those lights have been on?" I didn't know. Could be on a timer. Could be. He didn't sound convinced. I kept walking. The tally marks continued along both sides. I tried counting them at one point, but gave up. Too many. Too dense. The corridor branched after maybe 40 feet. A junction. 3-way split. Straight ahead, left, and right. All 3 passages had the same white tiles, same fluorescent lights, same metal grates in the floor. I stopped at the junction and swept my light down each path. Couldn't see the end of any of them. That's when I saw the lanyard. It was on the floor in the center of the junction, coiled in a loose spiral. Blue fabric with a plastic badge holder clipped to the end. I crouched and picked it up. The badge holder was clear. The card inside had the Eastern State logo at the top, the old prison seal with the radial cell blocks. Below that, visitor pass. Below that, a photo. A woman, 30s maybe, light brown hair, glasses, smiling. The badge was clean. No dust, no grime. The edges weren't worn. The photo wasn't faded. I turned it over. There was a printed date on the back, March 9th. That was 6 days ago. I stood up, looked at Don. This is from last week. He came over. I handed him the badge. He read it, front and back, then looked at the walls, the lights, the junction. Someone's been down here, he said. Yeah. Recently. Yeah. He handed the badge back. I clipped it to my jacket pocket. Don turned in a slow circle, checking all 3 passages. Then he stopped and looked at me. Your dad showed me the hatch, he said. About 4 years ago, maybe 5. I waited. He took me down to the basement, just the 2 of us, showed me the red hatch, told me it stayed bolted. Said if I ever saw it open, I call him first. Not Donna, not security. Him. And you agreed? Yeah. Don's jaw worked. He said it was handled, said it was under control, said as long as nobody opened it, we'd be fine. Fine how? He didn't say. I looked back down the corridor we'd come from. The metal door with the SEPTA sticker, the brick tunnel beyond it. 70 steps up to a hatch that had been bolted shut for years. My dad had known about this. He'd known exactly what was down here, and he'd managed it. For 23 years, he'd managed it. We need to report this, I said. Don nodded. Yeah. I turned and started back toward the door. Don followed. We reached the landing in maybe 15 seconds. I pushed the door open, still smooth, still easy, and stepped through onto the brick floor. The corridor was gone. I mean the tunnel, the spiral stairs, the way we'd come down. It was just a wall, solid brick, floor to ceiling, left to right, sealed. I stopped so fast Don ran into my back. What the? I moved my light across the surface. The bricks were dark red, same as the tunnel walls, but the mortar was different, lighter, wet-looking, fresh. I stepped closer, touched it. The mortar was soft, still curing. I could press my glove into it and leave a mark. No, Don said behind me, no, no, no. He pushed past me and put both hands on the wall. Started feeling along the edges, searching for a seam, a gap, anything. It was right here, he said. Right here. He slammed his palm against the bricks, then again. Then he made a fist and started pounding. Open up! Open the fuck up! His knuckles split on the 3rd or 4th hit. Blood smeared across the mortar. I grabbed his shoulder. Don, stop! He shook me off and hit the wall again. And the wall answered. A soft thud, muffled, from the other side. We both froze. It came again, a little lower this time, like something heavy shifting its weight, pressing close to the bricks. Don stepped back. His hand was shaking. Blood dripped off his knuckles onto the concrete. I kept my light on the wall, didn't move. The thud came a 3rd time. Same rhythm, same weight. Then nothing. I waited, counted to 30 in my head. No more sounds. Don was breathing hard beside me. We have to get out. Yeah, we have to. There has to be another way. I turned and looked back through the doorway. The fluorescent corridor, the white tiles, the 3-way junction 40 feet down. No way back, only forward. I stepped through the door again. Don followed without a word. We reached the junction and stopped. I swept my light down each passage one more time. Straight, left, right, all identical, all lit, all empty. Which way? Don said. I didn't know. I pulled out the sketch from my jacket pocket, unfolded it, looked at Tony's pencil lines, the red hatch, the note in the margin. There was nothing about tunnels, nothing about junctions, just the hatch and the warning. I folded the sketch and put it back. We pick one, I said. Don looked at me, then at the 3 passages. Straight, he said. Why? Because left and right feel like a trap. That was good enough. I stepped forward into the center passage. Don stayed close behind me. The corridor stretched ahead into darkness beyond the reach of the lights. The tally marks continued on both walls. The fluorescents hummed overhead. Behind us, back at the junction, I thought I heard something. Footsteps, maybe, or water dripping. I didn't look back. We kept moving. I stood at the junction, looking down each corridor. All 3 passages had the same setup. White tiles, fluorescent lights humming overhead, metal grates in the floor every 20 feet. But the tiles weren't identical. I stepped closer to the left passage and aimed my maglite at the wall. The tally marks were there, same as before. But underneath them, barely visible in the grout lines, someone had scratched arrows. Small ones, maybe an inch long. They pointed left, following the corridor deeper. I checked the right passage next. Same tally marks. Same arrows in the grout. These pointed right. The center passage, the one we'd just walked down, had arrows too. They pointed back toward the door, toward the brick wall that shouldn't exist. Don stepped up beside me. "You seeing this?" "Yeah." "Arrows?" "Yeah." He didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he crouched down and ran his glove along the grout line, tracing one of the arrows. These weren't carved. They're scratched. Something sharp. Probably a nail or a screw. I figured he was right. The lines were thin and uneven, not the clean cuts you'd get with a blade. Someone had marked these in a hurry, or in the dark. "Question is," Don said, standing up, "do we follow them or avoid them?" That was the question. If someone left arrows, maybe they were trying to help. Or maybe they were leading people deeper on purpose. No way to know. I checked the center passage again. The arrows pointing back felt wrong. We'd already seen what was behind us. A wall that hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. Going back wasn't an option. I looked up. The ceiling was the same in all 3 passages. Arched white tile, fluorescent fixtures every 12 feet, conduit running parallel to the walls. But the left and right passages sloped slightly downward. Not much. Maybe a 2% grade. Enough that water would drain away from the junction. The center passage sloped up. I pointed my maglite straight down the middle corridor and followed the beam as far as it reached. The grade was consistent. Subtle, but there. "We go center," I said. Don looked at me. "Why?" "It slopes up. Left and right go down." He checked for himself, tilting his head and squinting down each passage. Then he nodded. "Yeah? Okay. Up is good." I didn't know if up was good. We were already deep enough that the radios didn't work and the stairs had vanished. But up felt better than down. That was all I had. We started walking. The corridor stayed consistent for the first 100 feet. White tiles, tally marks, arrows scratched in the grout pointing forward. The fluorescent lights hummed the same pitch in every fixture. The floor grates were evenly spaced, 12 inches square, set into the concrete at 20-foot intervals. I aimed my maglite down through one of the grates as we passed. The beam disappeared into darkness. No bottom visible. Don stayed close. His hand kept drifting to his utility knife, then dropping, then drifting back. He wasn't talking anymore. The air smelled stale. Not bad, just old. It reminded me of the basement in my first apartment, the kind of smell that settles in when ventilation hasn't moved in years. After maybe 3 or 4 minutes, the corridor opened on the right. Not a junction, just a doorway. No door, just an opening cut into the tile. I stopped. Don stopped beside me. The room beyond was small, maybe 10 feet by 12. The walls were the same white tile as the corridor, but there was a window on the far wall. A real window. 4 panes, wood frame, old single-hung style. One of the panes was cracked, a clean split running diagonal from corner to corner. Through the window, I could see the prison exercise yard. Daylight. Full daylight. The yard was lit like mid-morning, maybe 10 or 11 a.m. The sky was overcast, flat gray clouds, no shadows on the ground. I stepped into the doorway but didn't go farther. Men were walking in the yard, 12, maybe 15 of them. They wore uniforms, dark gray with lighter gray stripes running vertical. Old-style prison uniforms, the kind I'd seen in photos from the 30s or 40s. They moved in slow loops around the perimeter, walking the same path over and over. I counted. 15 men. They walked single file, evenly spaced, each one following the man in front. The lead man reached the far corner, turned left, and kept walking. The second man reached the same corner and turned left. Same angle, same pace. It was a loop. Perfect repetition. "Dylan." Don's voice was quiet, tight. "I see it. We're under Cellblock 7. "I know. That's not possible." I didn't answer. He was right. We'd descended at least 60 or 70 steps, probably more. We were 100 feet down, maybe deeper. There was no window, there was no exercise yard, there was no daylight. But I could see it. One of the men in the yard looked up, not at the window, just up, at the sky. His face was blank, no expression. He held the position for 3 seconds, then looked down and kept walking. I heard something. Faint. Rhythmic. It took me a second to place it. Footsteps. Marching footsteps. Not from the yard. From somewhere farther down the corridor behind us. Don heard it too. He turned, facing back toward the junction. The sound was steady. Left, right, boots on concrete, multiple people moving in sync. "We need to go," Don said. I pulled back from the doorway. The exercise yard stayed visible through the window. Men in old uniforms, walking their loops, daylight that didn't exist. Don grabbed my arm and pulled me forward, away from the room. We walked fast, not quite running, following the corridor as it curved slightly to the right. The marching sound faded. Not quickly. It just got quieter, step by step until I couldn't hear it anymore. We kept moving. The corridor straightened out again after the curve. Same tiles, same lights, same grates. The tally marks thinned out here. Fewer clusters, more bare wall. The arrows in the grout kept pointing forward. Another opening appeared on the left. This one had a door, but it was propped open with a wooden wedge. The same kind of wedge Dad used to use in the Cellblock 7 stairwell. I stopped. Don looked at me, then at the door. "What?" "My dad used wedges like that. Lots of people use wedges." "Yeah?" But I stepped through anyway. The room was bigger than the last one, maybe 20 by 20. There was a workbench against the far wall, metal frame, plywood top, scratched and stained. A folding chair sat tucked under the bench. On the surface, a coil of wire, a flathead screwdriver, a rag, and a mug. The mug was white ceramic, stained brown inside from years of coffee. On the side, scratched into the glaze with something sharp, were the initials T.B. Tony Burgess. I walked over and picked it up. The ceramic was cool but not cold. The coffee stains looked old, baked in, but there was no dust. The mug was clean. Don stayed in the doorway. "Dylan." "It's his," I said. "What?" "This mug. It's my dad's." I set it back down, exactly where it had been. Next to the mug was a piece of graph paper, folded in quarters. I unfolded it. It was the same sketch. Cellblock 7 from above, the basement level, the red hatch marked on the west wall. But this copy had more. Fresh pencil lines extended from the hatch, tracing a path, spiral stairs, a corridor, a junction. The lines branched at the junction, showing 3 paths. One path continued forward and ended at a small circle drawn in blue ink. Inside the circle, someone had written out in capital letters. I pulled the original sketch from my pocket and compared them side by side. The old one stopped at the hatch. This one showed the route. "Don," He stepped in and looked over my shoulder. "Someone added to it," I said. "Your dad?" "I don't know." The handwriting didn't match. Dad's printing was blocky, all caps, engineer style. This was looser, smaller. The lines were shakier, drawn fast. But the circle was deliberate, neat. Someone took their time with that part. I folded both sketches and put the original back in my pocket. I kept the new one in my hand. "We follow this?" I said. Don didn't argue. We left the room and kept moving down the corridor. I checked the sketch every 30 feet or so, matching the route. The path showed 2 more turns, right, then left, before reaching the door marked with the circle. The first turn came up after maybe 60 feet. A passage opened on the right, narrower than the main corridor. The tiles were the same, but the lights were spaced farther apart. The sketch showed this turn. I took it. The second turn was 40 feet down, left. Another narrow passage, this one sloping up more noticeably. I could feel it in my calves as we climbed. The passage ended at a door. Steel. Painted gray. Institutional gray. The same color as the doors in the cell blocks upstairs. The paint was chipped around the handle and along the bottom edge where boots had kicked it open over the years. At chest height, someone had drawn a circle. Faint. Barely visible. The same size as the circle on the sketch. I stepped up and pressed my palm against it. The metal was warm. Not hot, just warmer than it should have been. The latch clicked. I didn't touch the handle. The latch clicked on its own, a soft metallic snap, and the door drifted inward half an inch. Behind us, the fluorescent lights went out. All of them. Every fixture in the passage, all at once. No flicker, no warning, just gone. The darkness dropped over us like a weight. I still had my hand on the door. I pushed it open and stepped through. I stepped through the door into a small room, maybe 12 feet by 10. Low ceiling, maybe 7 feet at most. Pipes everywhere. Cast iron, copper, PVC. Some I couldn't identify. Running along the walls and across the ceiling in tight bundles. Old insulation peeling off in gray strips. The air smelled like rust and mildew. Against the far wall, wedged between 2 thick vertical pipes, was a folding cot, the kind you'd take camping. Army green canvas stretched over a metal frame. A single wool blanket folded at the foot, no pillow. On the floor next to the cot, lined up against the wall, were notebooks. Maybe 6 or 7 of them, each one wrapped in clear plastic and sealed with duct tape. The kind of wrapping you'd do if you wanted to keep something dry. Don stepped in behind me and stopped. His flashlight beams swept across the pipes, the cot, the notebooks. "What the hell is this?" he said. Not a question. I didn't answer. I walked over to the cot and crouched down next to the notebooks. The plastic was clean, no dust. The duct tape still had adhesive shine to it, not yellowed or brittle. I picked up the first one, composition notebook, black and white marbled cover. The plastic crinkled in my hands. Through the wrapping, I could see writing on the cover in black marker, Log 1. Don crouched next to me and picked up another. Log 3, he read. I tore the tape off the first notebook and pulled it out of the plastic. The cover felt dry. I opened it. My father's handwriting filled the first page. Blocky capital letters, the same style he used on the sketch, but neater, deliberate. March 4th, I read aloud. Day 1, sealed the hatch at 2200 hours, bolts torqued to spec, told Don to call me if anything changes, stayed below to monitor, no movement detected. I turned the page. March 5th, day 2, door at junction shifted overnight. Yesterday it was steel with a SEPTA sticker. This morning it's wood with a brass handle, didn't open it. Marked the frame with chalk to track changes. I kept reading. March 6th, day 3, chalk mark is gone. Door is steel again, but handle is on the left now, not the right. Heard footsteps in the east passage at 0300. Counted 27 steps, evenly spaced. They stopped at the junction and didn't continue. Don's face had gone pale. He was staring at the notebook in his hands, not reading aloud. I flipped through more pages. My father's entries continued, one per day, sometimes two. Observations, measurements, notes about doors that changed, corridors that looped back on themselves, sounds that came from walls with no space behind them. April 9th, I read. Day 36. The room with the window now shows the yard at night. Same men walking the same loop. They don't stop when the yard lights go out. Avoided that corridor today. My chest felt tight. I looked at the cot, the blanket, the notebooks lined up on the floor. He'd been living down here, not just checking on things. Living. Don finally spoke, his voice rough. "Dylan." I looked up. He held out the notebook he'd been reading. Log 3. His hand was shaking. "He was tracking who went through which door," Don said. "He's got names, dates, routes they took, and whether they came back." I took the notebook from him, flipped to a random page. February 18th. Visitor logged in at 1400. Female, mid-30s, Historical Society. Entered through Cellblock 7 maintenance access without authorization. Found her badge at the junction. Searched center and left passages for 4 hours. No sign. Reported to Franklin as standard trespassing incident. I read it again. Then I flipped forward. February 23rd. Contractor logged in at 0900. Male, late 40s, plumbing assessment. Entered through East Wing basement. Found his tool belt near the grate at corridor marker 12. Searched until 0200. No sign. Reported to Franklin as early departure. No show. There were more. A dozen entries. Maybe more. I looked at Don. "You knew about this." He didn't answer right away. Then he set down the notebook he was holding and rubbed his face with both hands. "Your dad called me in November," Don said. "Year before last. Said he needed help sealing something. We came down together, just the two of us. Spent 3 days bolting that hatch shut, running extra welds, pouring a concrete pad over the whole thing. He told me people had been going missing. Not a lot. One every few months. Always people who got into the basements without proper clearance. He said as long as the hatch stayed sealed, it would stop. And you just went along with it." He said he had it handled. Don's voice cracked a little. He said he'd been managing it for years, and this was the final step. Lock it down, keep it quiet, and it'd be over. "So what happened?" I asked. "Why is the hatch open now?" Don looked at the floor. "Donna." I waited. "She wanted it forced," he said. 2 weeks ago she brought in Franklin and told him the renovation was behind schedule. Said there were utility access points on the drawings that needed inspection, and the hatch was one of them. Franklin told her it was sealed for safety reasons, but she overrode him. Said she had grant deadlines and couldn't afford delays. My hands tightened on the notebook. "She ordered it opened." "Yeah." "And you didn't tell her what was down here. Your dad made me promise." Don looked up at me. His eyes were red. He said if management found out, they'd send people down to investigate. More people missing meant more attention. More attention meant they'd never be able to seal it again. He said the only way to protect people was to keep them out. I stood up. My legs felt unsteady. Behind us, from the corridor we'd just come through, I heard something, a child laughing. High-pitched, bright, the kind of sound you'd hear on a playground. It came from the darkness past the doorway out where the lights had cut out. Don heard it too. He stood fast, his hand going to his utility knife. The laugh came again, closer this time. Then I heard scraping, fast, rhythmic, like something being dragged across tile at a run. Don backed toward the steel door we'd come through. "We need to go." I grabbed 2 of the notebooks off the floor, Log 1 and Log 3, and shoved them inside my jacket. The plastic crinkled against my ribs. The scraping sound got louder, faster. I could hear it echoing off the tile, coming from multiple directions at once. "Now," Don said. He stepped through the steel door first, back into the corridor with the fluorescent lights. I grabbed the last notebook, log 5, and followed. The lights were on again, humming, steady. Behind us, something hit the doorframe hard. Metal on metal, a sharp clang that rang in my ears. I spun around and saw movement in the darkness past the threshold, low to the ground. Fast. Don grabbed my shoulder. "Close it." I reached for the door and pulled. Something surged forward into the doorway. I saw a hand, small, pale, fingers too long, shoot out and grab Don's forearm. He screamed. The hand yanked him backward toward the darkness, with enough force that his feet left the ground. I lunged forward and grabbed his jacket with both hands, dropping the notebooks. His arm was already past the threshold, the hand pulling him through. "Don't let go," he shouted. I pulled. Hard. My boots slid on the concrete. The hand didn't let go. I could see it now, wrapped around his forearm, just above the wrist. The skin was gray-white, slick, like something that had been underwater too long. The nails were black and split. Don's eyes were wide, locked on mine. Then another hand came out of the darkness and grabbed his shoulder. I lost my grip. Don was yanked backward through the doorway into the dark in one sharp motion, his scream cutting off the second he crossed the threshold. The door slammed shut on its own. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the gray steel. I tried the handle, locked. I pounded on it. "Don!" Nothing. I pounded again, shouting his name. Silence. Then, from somewhere far down the corridor behind me, I heard the fluorescent lights start to go out. One by one. Click, click, click. I turned and ran. The lights kept cutting out behind me, darkness chasing me forward. I didn't look back. I just ran, my boots hitting concrete in uneven rhythm, my breath loud in my ears. The fluorescents ahead started flickering, then they went out too. But other lights came on, bare bulbs, dim yellow, hanging from wires every 20 feet. The walls looked different. Older brick, wet. I kept running. The corridor curved left, then right. I didn't recognize it. Didn't care. I just needed out. Ahead I saw a junction, 3 passages. I took the one that sloped up. My calves burned, my lungs burned. The bare bulbs flickered but stayed on. After maybe 2 minutes, I saw a low opening on the right. Not a door, just a gap in the wall. Concrete frame, darkness beyond. I ducked through. My hands hit chain link, a fence. I pushed and it gave, swinging outward. Daylight hit my face. I stumbled forward onto gravel and went down on one knee, gasping. I was in a service yard, fenced on all sides, 10 feet by 10 feet, dumpsters against the far fence, weeds growing through the gravel. I looked back. The gap I'd come through was a utility access. Concrete tunnel maybe 3 feet high. Rusted grate propped open. I stood up. My jacket was torn at the shoulder. My hands were scraped. The notebooks were still pressed against my ribs inside my jacket. I climbed the fence. My fingers barely held the chain link, but I made it over, dropping onto cracked asphalt on the other side. I was outside the perimeter. I could see the prison wall 50 yards to my left. I walked to my truck and got in. I drove straight to the Philadelphia Police Department, 6th District. Walked in at 11:47 a.m. and told the officer at the desk I needed to report a missing person and a workplace incident. They put me in a room with a detective named Danielle Neal. She was maybe mid-30s, auburn hair pulled back tight, blazer over a white blouse. She sat across from me with a notebook and a recorder and asked me to start from the beginning. I told her everything. The hatch, the tunnels, the notebooks, Don getting pulled through the door. She wrote it all down, didn't interrupt, didn't tell me I was crazy, When I finished, she asked if I had the notebooks. I pulled them out of my jacket and set them on the table. Log 1, Log 3, Log 5. She put on gloves and opened Log 1, read the first few pages. Then she closed it and looked at me. "You're saying your father documented people going missing for months," she said, "and didn't report it." "He was trying to stop it," I said. "That's why he sealed the hatch. And the hatch was reopened 2 weeks ago. Donna Dunn ordered it." Danielle wrote that down. "We'll need to speak with her, and with Dennis Franklin." "Okay." She stood. "Wait here." She left with the notebooks. I sat there for probably an hour, maybe more. When she came back, she had another officer with her. Older guy, sergeant's stripes. "We contacted the prison," Danielle said. "Dennis Franklin is coordinating a search of the area you described. They're also looking for Don Singh and Donna Dunn." "Donna wasn't with us," I said. "She didn't report to her office this morning," the sergeant said. "Her radio's offline." My stomach dropped. "They're checking the Cellblock 7 basement now," Danielle said. "They kept me for another 3 hours, asked the same questions 5 different ways, took my statement, took photos of my scraped hands and torn jacket. At 4 p.m., Danielle came back in and sat down. Franklin's team accessed the hatch," she said. "They found the spiral stairs, went down approximately 30 steps before the stairs ended at a brick wall. No tunnel, no corridor, no door." I stared at her. "They brought in ground-penetrating radar," she continued. "No voids detected beyond the stairwell, just solid earth. That's not possible. They also found Donna Dunn." I waited. She was in her office, door locked from the inside, unresponsive but breathing. Paramedics took her to Hahnemann. She's stable, but she hasn't spoken. "What happened to her?" Danielle's expression didn't change. She had bruising around her throat, fingerprints, small hands. The attending physician said it looked like she'd been strangled but stopped breathing on her own before losing consciousness. I didn't say anything. "There was water on the floor around her desk," Danielle added, "and wet footprints. Size 7. Same as the ones you reported seeing by the hatch." She closed her notebook. "Franklin's welding the hatch shut," she said. "As of 1600 hours today, Cellblock 7 basement is closed to all personnel pending investigation." "What about Dawn?" "Still missing. We've issued a bulletin." She stood. "You're free to go," she said. "We'll be in touch." I resigned the next morning, sent Donna an email, didn't wait for a response. The prison called twice, Franklin's office. I didn't answer. Danielle called once. Left a message saying Donna still hadn't spoken and Don was still missing. Said they'd keep me updated. I didn't call back. I stayed home, didn't take new contracts, didn't return calls. 4 days later, my kitchen sink backed up. I figured it was the trap. Old building, happens. I got down on my knees and opened the cabinet under the sink, pulled out the cleaning supplies and set them on the floor. The drain pipe looked fine, no leaks, no cracks. Then I heard it. Faint, barely audible. A voice, coming up through the drain. I leaned closer. The voice was counting. 1. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. I put my ear near the pipe. 4. The voice was soft, flat, no inflection. 5. It kept going. I reached for the shutoff valve under the sink and turned it until it stopped. The counting didn't stop. 6. 7. I stood up and backed away from the sink. The counting continued, steady, rhythmic, like a tally that never ended.